I always believed family would protect me, no matter what. That belief died the day my grandfather passed away. He raised me like a son. He paid my school fees, taught me business skills, and always told me, "Henry, you will lead this family someday." My parents died when I was little, so he was all I had when we gathered for the reading of his will. I sat with hope in my heart. My Uncle Mark, his wife Clara, and my cousin Felix sat together, whispering and smiling like they already knew the outcome. I thought they were just nervous. The lawyer opened a brown folder and began reading. He listed properties, shares, and land worth millions. My heart raced. Then he said something that froze me. To my grandson, Henry, but before he could continue, Uncle Mark stood up and slammed his hand on the table. "There's no grandson in this will. Henry is not blood," he shouted. Everyone stared at me. The room felt small. My mouth went dry. The lawyer looked confused. "Sir, this document." Clara grabbed a different paper and waved it in the air. "Here's the real will. The latest one. Henry gets nothing." My chest tightened as the lawyer slowly took the paper. Uncle Mark smirked at me and whispered, "You were never one of us." And the lawyer announced the words that broke me. "Henry has been removed." I felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. The lawyer continued reading the new document, and every line hurt. All the property, houses, land, cars, company shares, went to Uncle Mark and his family. Not a single item had my name. I stood up. "This is impossible. Grandpa would never do this." Clara gave a fake, sad smile. "People change before they die." Felix leaned back in his chair and laughed quietly. "Looks like you picked the wrong family, cousin." My hands shook with anger, but I forced myself to stay calm. Grandpa always taught me to think before acting. I turned to the lawyer. "When was this new will signed?" He checked the date. 3 days before his death. My heart stopped. Grandpa was in the hospital then. He could barely speak. How could he sign anything? I said, "He was unconscious that day." The room went silent. Uncle Mark quickly said, "Are you calling us liars?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Their faces already showed fear. The lawyer looked uneasy. If he was not conscious, this will maybe invalid. Clara grabbed the document back. "The decision is final." They rushed out before more questions could be asked. The lawyer sighed and whispered to me, "Something is wrong here." I nodded, tears burning my eyes. They stole everything. But as I walked out of that room, one thought grew stronger in my mind. They made a mistake. They thought I was weak. They would regret it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my small room, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. Grandpa always said, "If something feels wrong, follow the truth, not the noise." So I decided I would not just accept what happened. The next morning, I went to the hospital where Grandpa had stayed. I spoke to Nurse Ada, who had cared for him. She remembered me. "Henry, I'm so sorry about your loss," she said kindly. I asked her, "Do you remember the day he supposedly signed a new will?" She frowned. "Signed?" He couldn't even hold a pen. His hands were shaking badly. He slept most of that day. My heart raced. So he couldn't have signed anything? She shook her head. "Impossible." Then she paused and added, "But your uncle and his wife came that evening with a man in a suit. They told us to leave the room for privacy." My stomach twisted. I knew what that meant. I thanked her and left, anger boiling inside me. They had forged the will. As I walked out of the hospital, someone grabbed my arm. It was the lawyer. He looked nervous. "Henry!" I checked the signature again. "It doesn't match the official records." My breath caught. "What does that mean?" I asked. He looked around and whispered, "It means the will is fake." The lawyer invited me to his office. The room smelled like old books and dust, but his expression was sharp and alert. He placed both wills on the table. "Look here," he said, pointing at Grandpa's signature on older documents. The writing was strong and smooth. Then he pointed to the signature on the new will. It was shaky, uneven, and messy. "This was not written by the same person," he said. "So what can we do?" I asked. He leaned back. "We can challenge the will in court. But your uncle is powerful. He has friends in high places. I clenched my fists. I don't care. I want justice. Before he could respond, the door burst open. Uncle Mark walked in with two large men behind him. Well, he said, smirking, trying to steal what's ours, boy. The lawyer stood up. Sir, you cannot just enter. One of the men pushed him back into his chair. Uncle Mark leaned close to me. Drop this, Henry. You have nothing. No money. No support. No family. He squeezed my shoulder painfully. Walk away or you'll regret it. He turned and left, his bodyguards following. The lawyer looked shaken. Henry, this is dangerous. I stared at the fake will. They started a war. I whispered, and I will finish it. After that threat, I knew I needed a plan, not just anger. A smart plan. Grandpa always told me, the smartest person in the room is not the loudest. It's the one who listens. So I listened. I began gathering everything. Hospital records, old signatures, voice messages, and even photos of Grandpa days before he died. In every picture, his hand shook badly. He could not write. But I needed one more thing, proof of who forged the will. I remembered Nurse Ada saying a man in a suit visited that day. Maybe he was the key. I went back to the hospital and asked around. After hours of searching, a cleaner finally told me something shocking. The man in the suit, he works at the same law firm as your uncle. My heart pounded. That meant the forgery was organized. As I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A voice said, "Stop digging, Henry. You don't know who you're dealing with." Then the call ended. Fear hit me, but it didn't stop me. If they were calling, it meant I was getting close. I looked at the sky and whispered, "Grandpa, I will clear your name." But then a car slowly pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, and I froze when I saw who was inside. The window rolled down, and I saw Felix sitting in the back seat, wearing sunglasses like he was some kind of celebrity. "Get in," he said. I hesitated, but the driver opened the back door. People were watching. I didn't want a scene, so I slowly got in. The car smelled of expensive leather and perfume. Felix smiled. "You're causing trouble, cousin." I looked straight ahead. "The truth scares you?" He laughed. "Truth? You think anyone will believe you over my father? He owns a company, the properties, the connections." I stayed silent. Felix leaned closer. "Let me give you advice. Take a small payout. Leave town. Start over." "So you're admitting the will is fake?" I asked quietly. His smile dropped. The driver suddenly took a sharp turn, heading toward the outskirts of town. My heart raced. "Where are we going?" I asked. No one answered. We stopped near an abandoned warehouse. Felix's voice became cold. "This is your last warning. Drop the case." The driver opened the door, signaling me to get out. I stepped out slowly, my legs shaking. Felix leaned out the window. "You have no power. Henry, remember that." The car sped away, leaving dust in the air. I stood alone, my hands trembling, not just from fear, but from realization. They were desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. I pulled out my phone. It had been recording the whole ride. My recording was clear. Felix had mentioned a payout and leaving town. It didn't prove everything, but it showed fear. I went straight to the lawyer's office. When he heard the recording, his eyes widened. "This is good," he said. "It suggests they are hiding something." But then he frowned. "However, we need stronger evidence. We must find the person who forged the signature." I thought about the man in the suit. The cleaner said he worked at the same law firm as my uncle. What if we checked the visitor log at the hospital? I suggested. The lawyer nodded. "Good idea." We drove there together. At the reception, the nurse checked the records. "Yes," she said. "Your uncle and his wife visited, and a Mr. Collins from Mark and Associates." I felt a chill. Mark and Associates was Uncle Mark's firm. We asked to see their CCTV footage, but the nurse looked uncomfortable. "We can't show that without permission," she said. The lawyer leaned forward. "This is a legal matter. A forged will is a crime." After some discussion, she agreed to let us view it privately. When the footage loaded, my heart pounded. There was Uncle Mark, Clara, and a man in a suit entering Grandpa's room. But something else made my blood run cold. Grandpa's doctor followed them in. I whispered, "Why was the doctor there?" The lawyer's face darkened. "This goes deeper than we thought." We watched the footage closely. The doctor closed the door behind him, blocking the camera's view of the room. 10 minutes passed. Then the man in the suit came out holding a folder. He looked nervous. Uncle Mark followed, smiling. Clara wiped her eyes like she had been crying. The doctor walked out last, looking nervous and avoiding the camera. The lawyer paused the video. "This suggests the doctor may have helped him," he said. I clenched my fists. Why would a doctor risk his career? The lawyer sighed. Maybe money, maybe pressure. I stared at the screen. I needed answers. We went to find the doctor, but the nurse told us he was on vacation. That sounded suspicious. As we left the hospital, I noticed someone watching us from across the street. A tall man in a black jacket. When I looked directly at him, he walked away quickly. I swallowed hard. "We're being watched." The lawyer nodded. "Your uncle wants to scare us." But the fear I felt slowly turned into determination. "Can we request medical files?" I asked. The lawyer smiled slightly. "Yes, and if the doctor signed anything illegal, we will find it." That evening, I returned home exhausted. But when I opened my door, I stopped cold. My room had been searched. Drawers open, papers on the floor. Someone had been here, and they were looking for something. I rushed inside, checking my bag where I kept all my evidence. The hospital notes, the photos, the signatures, samples. Gone. My heart dropped. They knew exactly what to take. But then I remembered something important. The voice recording. I had uploaded it to cloud storage earlier. They hadn't gotten that. I sat on my bed, trying to calm myself. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Last warning. Stop. No name. No details. Just a threat. I took a deep breath. They thought destroying my documents would stop me. They didn't know I had backups. Grandpa taught me to always keep copies of important papers. I remembered his old study at the family house. He kept files there that no one touched. Maybe, just maybe, he left something behind. I grabbed my jacket and headed toward the old house. When I arrived, the gate was locked, but I still had a spare key. The house was dark and quiet. I walked to the study, my footsteps echoing. I opened the drawer where Grandpa kept personal letters. Inside, I found an envelope with my name on it. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. But when I read the first line, my breath stopped. The note said, "Henry, if you are reading this, they have tried to take everything from you." My eyes filled with tears. Grandpa knew. He expected this. The letter continued. I changed my will, but I did not trust Mark. I made a copy and placed it with someone I trust. You are the rightful heir. My heart raced. A copy. Someone else had the real will. At the bottom of the letter was a name. Speak to Lawyer Benson. I froze. Lawyer Benson was not the lawyer who read the will. I had never heard of him. Why would Grandpa use a different lawyer? Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned quickly. Uncle Mark stood in the doorway, his face cold and angry. "So," he said quietly, "you found the letter." My heart pounded. I backed away, but he stepped closer. "You should have walked away. Henry, now things will get worse for you." He reached for the letter. I grabbed it and bolted toward the stairs. He shouted, "Stop!" I ran out of the house, clutching the letter tightly. As I reached the gate and jumped into the street, one thought filled my mind. There was a real will, and if I found Lawyer Benson, everything would change. I didn't stop running until I reached a busy street. Cars honked. People moved around me, but all I could hear was my heartbeat. I ducked into a small cafe and sat in the corner, trying to catch my breath. I pulled out the letter again, reading Grandpa's words. Speak to Lawyer Benson. Why hadn't anyone mentioned this lawyer? Why wasn't he at the will reading? I searched his name online. Only one result appeared, a small private office on the edge of town. As I scrolled, the cafe door opened. Two men walked in, looking around. My stomach tightened. They were the same men who came with Uncle Mark to the lawyer's office. I slid down in my seat, hiding behind a menu. One of them scanned the room, eyes sharp. I stood up slowly and walked toward the restroom, pretending to make a call. When I reached the back door, I slipped outside into the alley. Cold air hit my face. They were following me now. I hurried away, blending into the crowd. If Uncle Mark was sending people after me, it meant the letter was dangerous to him. I took a deep breath. I needed to find Lawyer Benson before they did. I headed toward the bus station. But when I arrived, I froze. The bus stop sign had been smashed, and police tape blocked the entrance. Something had happened there, and I had a bad feeling I knew why. A police officer stood near the taped area. I approached him carefully. "What happened here?" I asked. He sighed. "A man was attacked last night. He's in the hospital now. Name's Benson." My heart dropped. Lawyer Benson. Uncle Mark had gotten to him first. "Is he alive?" I asked quickly. The officer nodded. "Barely, but he can't speak yet." I thanked him and walked away, my mind racing. If Benson had the real will, they must have tried to silence him. But that meant they hadn't found it. There was still hope. I headed to the hospital, keeping my hood up. Inside, I asked the nurse about Benson. "Room 214, she said. I walked down the hallway. The air cold and quiet. When I reached the room, I peeked inside. Benson lay in bed, bandaged and weak, eyes closed. I stepped in and whispered, "Sir, I'm Henry. My grandfather sent me." His eyes slowly opened. He looked scared. He glanced toward the doorway, then motioned weakly toward the drawer beside him. I opened it. Inside was a small USB drive. My hands shook as I picked it up. Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the hall. Voices. One of them was familiar. Uncle Mark. I slipped the USB into my pocket and hid behind the curtain. The door opened. Uncle Mark walked in. "We need to know where it is," he said. My heart pounded so loud I thought they would hear it. I held my breath as Uncle Mark stood near the bed. He leaned close to Benson. "Where's the document? We know you hid it." Benson didn't speak. His eyes stayed shut. Uncle Mark sighed. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Clara's voice suddenly joined him. She sounded angry. "If he refuses to talk, we will search everything." They were desperate. Uncle Mark whispered something to the man with him. Then they left the room. I waited a few seconds before moving. Benson slowly opened his eyes again. He looked at me and mouthed, "Run." I nodded. I slipped out the back of the room and walked fast down the hall. When I reached the exit, I heard shouting behind me. They had discovered the open drawer. I pushed through the doors and ran toward the parking lot. Once I reached the street, I slowed down and took out the USB. If it held the real will, everything could change. But I needed a computer. I headed to the lawyer's office. When I arrived, he let me in, locking the door behind us. "What did you find?" he asked. I placed the USB on the table. His eyes widened. He plugged it into his laptop. A folder appeared. He clicked it. My heart nearly stopped when the first file opened. On the screen was a scanned copy of a will. At the top, in bold letters, "Last will and testament of Daniel Okoro." My grandfather's name. The lawyer scrolled down. My breath caught. "To my grandson Henry, I leave all my properties, company shares, and assets." I felt tears fill my eyes. Grandpa had trusted me. He wanted me to have everything. The lawyer whispered, "This is a real will. It has witness signatures and official stamps." He clicked another file. A video opened. It showed Grandpa in the hospital bed, weak but awake. He spoke clearly. "I, Daniel Okoro, wish for Henry to inherit everything. He is my only loyal family." My knees nearly gave out. This was undeniable proof. But suddenly, the video glitched and stopped. The lawyer frowned. "The file is damaged. We need the full version." My heart raced. "Where is it?" I asked. He opened the last document. A note from Benson. "Backup stored in safe deposit box. Bank of Westfield." Code 1973. Before we could react, glass shattered. A rock flew through the window. I ducked as it hit the wall. A voice shouted from outside, "Hand over the USB, Henry." I recognized the voice. Felix. They had found us. The lawyer grabbed the USB and shoved it into his pocket. "Go out the back," he whispered. We ran toward the rear door, but as soon as he opened it, two men stood there. We froze. They blocked the exit. The lawyer whispered, "Follow me," and rushed up the stairs. We reached the second floor, just as Felix entered through the front. "Search everywhere," he yelled. We hid in a storage room filled with old files. I could hear footsteps and voices getting closer. The lawyer whispered, "If they get the USB, we lose." I nodded. Then I remembered something. My phone. It had a scanner app. I grabbed a USB, plugged it into the lawyer's laptop, and quickly took pictures of the Raoul pages on the screen. Footsteps stopped outside the door. Felix's voice, "Open it." My heart slammed against my chest. The lawyer whispered, "Jump." There was a small window behind us. He slid it open, and cold air rushed in. Below was a narrow alley. The door handle turned. I climbed through and dropped to the ground, landing hard. The lawyer followed. We ran as the door burst open above. Felix looked out the window and shouted, "You can't run forever." But I wasn't running forever. I was running toward the bank. We reached the bank of Westfield early the next morning. The lawyer looked tired but determined. Inside, a security officer stopped us. "Do you have an appointment?" The lawyer showed his ID. "We need access to a safe deposit box. Legal emergency." The officer hesitated, then led us to a small room. A bank manager arrived with keys. "What box number?" he asked. I handed him the note, 1973. He nodded and opened the vault area. My heart pounded as he unlocked the box and placed it on the table. He left the room. The lawyer opened it slowly. Inside was a sealed envelope and a small external drive. He handed me the envelope. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a full, original will with official stamps, signatures, and dates. We had everything. But before we could celebrate, alarms suddenly blared. Red lights flashed. The vault door slammed shut automatically. A voice shouted through the speaker system, "Everyone stay where you are." The lawyer looked confused. "What is happening?" Then we heard footsteps outside the vault. A familiar voice spoke through the metal door. "Well done, Henry. You led us right to it." My blood ran cold. It was Uncle Mark. We were trapped. The metal door echoed as Uncle Mark spoke again. "You should have stayed quiet, Henry. Now you've trapped yourself." I looked at the lawyer. His face was pale. "We need to get out," he whispered. The vault was thick steel. No windows. Only one door. I checked my pockets. No tools. Just my phone, the envelope, and the external drive. The lawyer pressed a button on the wall phone, but it was dead. Uncle Mark's voice came again. "Give me the documents, and I'll let you walk out." I knew he was lying. He would never let us leave with the truth. I shouted back, "You forged a will. You poisoned Grandpa's last days with lies." Silence. Then he laughed. Grandpa was old. He didn't know what he wanted. My stomach twisted. He had no shame. The lawyer whispered, "There must be an emergency release button." We searched the walls. Nothing. Then I remembered something. When the alarms went off, the vault door closed automatically. It must unlock when the system resets. How long until reset? I asked. The lawyer checked his watch. About 10 minutes if no one overrides it. That's when we heard Felix outside. "Override the system. Keep it locked." My heart sank. We were running out of time. The lawyer leaned close to me. "There is one more option." He pointed to a small air vent near the floor. It looked barely big enough for a person, but it might be our only chance. The vent cover was screwed in tightly, but the lawyer pulled a small pocket tool from his jacket. "You carry that?" I whispered. He shrugged. "Old habit." We worked fast, unscrewing the vent while footsteps moved outside. Felix's voice echoed, "Break the door if you have to." The screws fell one by one. When the last one dropped, we pulled off the cover. The vent was narrow and dark, but I could crawl through. The lawyer shook his head. I'm too big. You go. Take the documents. My chest tightened. I'm not leaving you. He looked at me firmly. Henry, listen. If they catch you, everything is lost. You must get to the court. He placed the external drive and envelope into my hands. You are the rightful heir. Your grandfather trusted you. My eyes burned with tears, but I nodded. Voices grew louder outside. Someone hit the vault door with a tool. Boom. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lawyer pushed me toward the vent. Go. I crawled inside, clutching the documents. The metal walls scraped my arms, but I kept moving. The air was hot and hard to breathe. Behind me, I heard the vault door shake again. Boom. Then I heard shouting. They're trying to escape. I crawled faster. The vent turned sharply, leading downward. Suddenly, the metal beneath me gave way. I slid down a chute, unable to stop myself. I burst out into another room and crashed onto the floor. I looked up and froze. Someone was standing there. I scrambled back, clutching the envelope. The person stepped forward. It was the doctor from the hospital, the one who had helped Uncle Mark. He looked nervous. Henry, listen. I stood up, angry. You helped him forge the will. He shook his head fast. No, I didn't sign anything. They threatened me. They said they would ruin my career. His voice trembled. They forced me to leave the room that night. When I returned, the will was already signed. I studied his face. He looked scared, not proud. Why are you here? I asked. He lowered his voice. I came to warn you. They plan to destroy the Real will and make it look like you stole money from a bank. My heart pounded. They wanted to frame me. He continued. I heard them say they called the police. They told them you broke in. My stomach turned. If the police arrived before I proved the truth, I could be arrested. Suddenly, loud footsteps echoed in the hallway. Felix shouted, He's down here. The doctor grabbed my arm. This way. He led me through a side door into a maintenance tunnel. The air smelled dusty and damp. We ran through the tunnel until we reached a ladder. Climb, he whispered. I climbed quickly, my hands slipping from sweat. When I reached the top, I pushed open a metal hatch. Fresh air hit my face. We were outside behind the bank. Then I heard sirens. Police cars were arriving. I ducked behind a dumpster as police cars pulled up to the front entrance. Officers rushed inside, guns drawn. I could hear shouting. Felix's voice carried across the parking lot. There. He ran that way. He was pointing in the opposite direction. He was lying to the police, trying to frame me. The doctor crouched beside me, breathing hard. You need to get to the court today. Once the judge sees the real will, they can't touch you. But the police, I began. He shook his head. If they arrest you before you present it, your uncle wins. He was right. I had evidence that could destroy their plan, but only if I reached the court first. The doctor handed me a folded paper. What's this? I whispered. My written statement. I'll testify. I stared at him. Why help me now? He looked ashamed. Your grandfather was a good man. I failed him once. I won't fail again. Before I could answer, a voice shouted from behind us. Hey! Stop! 2 officers had spotted us. I bolted, sprinting across the parking lot. The doctor ran the other way, leading the officers away from me. I didn't look back. I ran toward the main road, breathing hard. Cars rushed past. I waved at a taxi. It stopped. I jumped in and shouted, To the courthouse! The driver stared at me in shock. Why the hurry? I looked back and saw Uncle Mark stepping out of a police car. He saw me. Our eyes met. This was a final race. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, neighbors, even old family friends filled every seat. Everyone wanted to see how our family drama would end. My uncle sat beside his lawyer, looking calm and proud. My cousins whispered and laughed like they had already won. But when the judge asked for the final evidence, my lawyer stood up. We have one last document, he said. He handed the judge a paper with a red seal. My uncle's face turned pale. The judge read it slowly, then looked up. This DNA test proves that the heir named in the original was the only legal child of the deceased. My heart jumped. The judge continued, "And that heir is you." Gasps filled the room. My uncle slammed the table. "This can't be," he shouted. But deep down, everyone knew it was true. The judge wasn't done. We also discovered forged signatures on the updated will. My cousins froze. My uncle grabbed the chair arm like he would fall. The judge turned to them. "You try to fake a will and hide the real heir. This is a crime." The whole courtroom erupted again. My aunt began crying. My cousins looked like they wanted to disappear. Then the judge said something that shocked everyone. "The real will states that the entire estate belongs to the legal child without sharing." I covered my mouth. Everything? The house? The land? The money? All of it? My uncle stared at me with pure anger. "This isn't over," he whispered. But he was wrong. Security officers walked in and told my uncle and cousins to stand. They had to leave the courtroom for questioning about fraud. People recorded them with their phones as they walked out. All their pride, gone. All their fake confidence, gone. For the first time, they looked small. The lawyer leaned close to me and said, "You don't only win the estate, you win justice." I couldn't stop smiling. Not because I got the money, but because the truth finally stood tall. After court, everyone expected me to kick my family out of the house and ruin them. Even my lawyer said, "You have every right." But when I saw my uncle on the steps outside, tired, scared, and defeated, I remembered something my dad once told me. Revenge may feel good for a moment, but kindness builds your legacy. So I walked up to him. He didn't look at me. "I'm not sending you to jail," I said quietly, "but you must return everything you took and leave the house. I won't let you control my life again." He finally looked up, shocked. "Why?" "Because I'm not like you." He had no words. A month later, the house felt peaceful. I hung my dad's picture in the living room and whispered, "I did it." People in town respected me now, not for the money, but for standing strong and choosing the right path. My uncle and cousins moved away, starting fresh somewhere else. Sometimes I still think about the pain they caused me, but then I remember the moment the judge declared the truth, and I smile. Justice came. Truth won. And I finally started my own life, free and proud. The will they tried to steal became the key to my future. My story didn't end with revenge. It ended with victory and growth. The end.